Thank you very much to the Visitation Valley Community Unit B for giving me this opportunity to speak to you today and share my vision for how to represent this Assembly District in California. My vision for California is a state where we stop talking about poverty and actually start ending poverty, where we begin doing that by having a true living wage. A state where homelessness is not left to the generosity of each individual city or county, but is recognized finally as a humanitarian challenge that the entire state must pay for. I see a California where we don't abandon neighborhoods or communities, a state where the tragedy of a neighborhood like the Tenderloin would be unthinkable, a state where Black and Brown people are not asked to do our frontline work and then left to die from COVID in dramatically higher numbers. I see a state where everyone has affordable healthcare, everyone has access to quality mental health, and everyone can find effective drug and alcohol treatment when they actually need it. I see a California where we create middle-class jobs today by investing in the affordable green energy that will save our planet tomorrow. A California where we don't confuse luxury housing with affordable housing. A California where we end hunger now, where we grow our economy quickly and share our prosperity fairly to everyone. I see a state where we choose our leaders, not the giant corporations. A government that looks like us, fights for every Californian. That's what this campaign is about. I hope you will join us at camposforus.com. Thank you.
If elected, you will represent Visitation Valley and Bayview Hunters Point. Both neighborhoods consistently have the lowest voter turnout numbers. How would you encourage more registered voters in Visitation Valley and Bayview Hunters Point to vote in this and future elections?
I think that one of the reasons why there is so much hesitation or engagement when it comes to voting by residents of neighborhoods like Visitation Valley, Bayview, the Mission, other neighborhoods, is that they feel disconnected from our government. They feel that our government has not really addressed their issues. And quite frankly, that has been exacerbated during the pandemic. And I think that one way we do that is to change the way government approaches these communities. And I think you have to start by how you run your campaigns. We are running a corporate-free campaign because we believe that as elected officials, someone should be beholden to the people, not the corporate interests. So that's one way to engage people, to actually address the issues that they are facing. But the second thing is that you have to make voting easier. And I think that having mail-in ballots is a start. I think that we need to do that across the board going forward. And quite frankly, I think that we need to engage more residents of these communities to do outreach to those communities, because I think it's easier when someone that is part of your neighborhood comes to you and asks you to be engaged. And that means doing it in a culturally competent way. We have to make sure that in monolingual communities, that there are people who are reaching out to them who speak their language. And then, the last thing that I would say is that there has to be accountability of elected officials, accountability in how they do their work. And one thing that I think needs to be done at the state level is to change the way in which campaigns are funded. I believe that we need to have a public finance system that actually puts public money so that these politicians are not so beholden to the business and corporate interests that, quite frankly, control a place like Sacramento. That's it.
Homelessness impacts neighborhoods differently. In the southeastern neighborhoods, we are seeing an increasing number of people living in vehicles, especially RVs. The city's response to this issue is often in conflict with the community's calls for lasting actions. If elected, how would you work with neighbors and the city to address this issue?
I really think that the status quo when it comes to homelessness is not working. And I am someone who has been fighting the status quo on the issue of homelessness for a long time. And I think that I bring the experience that is needed in Sacramento to change the way we address the issue of homelessness. When I was on the Board of Supervisors, I created the first safe navigation center actually at 16th and Mission, which actually set a standard for how to begin to deal with people living on the streets. I also, at that time, asked for the creation of more navigation centers and that one of them be a safe injection site. Had we done what I proposed in 2016, we would have saved thousands of lives. When I left San Francisco's Board of Supervisors and became Deputy County Executive in Santa Clara County, one of the areas that I oversaw was homelessness. And the way we addressed homelessness was that there was a ballot that was put on a measure that was put on the ballot to fund supportive housing. And our goal was to build 4,500 units of supportive housing to house the people on the street, but to connect those individuals to services, mental health, substance abuse. That is what is needed at the state level. And I think that what needs to happen is someone like me going to Sacramento with the experience to finally push the state to not just leave it to cities like San Francisco to do it on their own. I think we actually need to have a housing bond measure on the ballot that fund services for these individuals. And we need to hear directly from these communities. But I will tell you one thing, that I would never let what happened to the Tenderloin happen under my watch. And I am a very hands-on individual. As a supervisor and as a member of the state assembly, I will listen directly to these neighborhoods to make sure that we're addressing their needs.
Some of San Francisco's lowest performing schools are located in Visitation Valley and Bayview Hunters Point. If elected, what would you do to help?
Education is a big priority for me because I believe that education is the great equalizer, and public schools are the reason that I am here today. I learned English as an undocumented immigrant in public schools, and I was admitted into Stanford and then Harvard Law School because of our public school system. And yet, this public school system is failing so many kids. And a lot of it has to do with funding. Money is not everything, but funding is critical. In San Francisco, we are not being funded at the level that most school districts in the country are being funded. If we were there, we would be getting another $100 million a year in San Francisco public schools. So one of the first things that I'm going to do in Sacramento is to push to increase funding for K through 12. Right now, California is arguably the wealthiest state in the country, and yet we are in the bottom 10 in per pupil spending. I'm going to work so that we are once again in the top 10 to finally fund public education the way we should. But it's not just K through 12. We should also prioritize higher education and vocational training. And I believe that California is wealthy enough that if we choose to do this, that we could pay for it. And that is to make college, including community colleges, vocational trainings, free for any Californian that wants it. There are places in the world like Ireland that are a lot less wealthy than California that have done it, and their economy is growing. It's an investment in the future. But I'm going to be someone who prioritizes education because I believe that we cannot address the issues facing society unless we give, especially young people, the opportunity to achieve their potential through the public school system.